Welcome back to Sex and Space. I'm Toshi, and today we were joined by Danielle Broster from the Australian Federal Police. Danielle is a senior prevention officer for their online child safety team, which she's been a part of for 5 years. The Australian Federal Police lead an education program called Think You Know, which aims to prevent online child sexual exploitation, and that's what Danielle was here with us today to talk about. Together, she and Tim had a conversation all about sextortion, what it is, who it impacts, some of the warning signs that someone might be a victim, as well as practical advice for parents on how they can protect their kids online. Let's get into the episode. We did want to include a trigger warning before the interview, as this episode deals with topics relating to sextortion, online exploitation, and the manipulation of young people. These are sensitive and potentially distressing subjects, so listener discretion is advised. And if you find any part of this conversation overwhelming, please do reach out to support services if you need.
Welcome to Sex and Space.
Awesome, thank you so much for having me. It's great
so nice to have you.
Yeah.
And your valuable time and expertise.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I'm a parent myself. I've got a 9 and a 6-year-old. Their online use is obviously much more than mine was when I was 9 and 6.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation for a lot of people. The hopefully not too sad and depressing. Hopefully full of awesome resources to get people thinking and primed about bringing up kids in 2024.
Yeah, definitely. You know, if people sort of walk away from this scared or terrified, then I probably haven't done my job properly.
Yeah.
I think, you know, we are pro-technology. You know, we're here. The technology's not going away. The internet is popular, not just for young people, but for people of all ages. So we need to know how to use it safely. And
absolutely.
That's why we're here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had a look at the Think You Know website, and I think some of the tips and tricks on there already just kind of, you know, give me a little peace of mind that they're not terrifyingly difficult. So let's start there. Let's just give us a brief history of the Think You Know program.
Yeah.
How did that one start?
So Think You Know originated over in the UK, and it was adopted in Australia probably, I think, like 14 years ago now. And it's law enforcement led, run by the Australian Federal Police, education program to learning about online child sexual exploitation, where across Australia in every state and territory we work closely with state and territory police, and we have industry partners in Microsoft, Datacom, Commonwealth Bank, Neighbourhood Watch Australasia, Bank West, who we work really closely with. We go into schools, essentially, and law enforcement will talk to kids about being safe online, you know, sort of the red flags, things to look out for, and also build relationships with kids so kids know that police are a safe person to go to. We also go out into the community and talk to parents and carers about how they can keep their kids safe. We have a big cohort of wonderful volunteers who dedicate their free time to going into the community and talking to parents and carers. We produce resources that are on our website, advice articles, fact sheets, aimed at educators as well. Pretty much anyone that'll listen to us, we talk to about keeping kids safe online. Yeah,
awesome. Well, as I say, it feels like a hugely relevant topic. Now, in terms of where this conversation is going to go, we'll just define that. And it's a field that you personally sort of work a lot in, right? And that's sexual extortion. So it's within the category of online child sexual exploitation. But yeah, sexual extortion, or child sexual extortion, maybe, or sextortion is the sort of the term that's easier to say. So can we define exactly what that is?
Yeah, of course. Sexual extortion in the context of like our line of work with under 18 is essentially an extension of online grooming. So a young person is contacted over social media maybe this person flirts with them, encourages them to send a nude image of themselves. Once they send that nude image, the offender then makes threats to send that image with their friends, or to their family, to their contact list, their friends' follower list, unless they comply. And usually it's demands for, for a long time, those demands were for more images. It was online child sex offenders demanding more nude or naked images, videos, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But recently, this financial aspect, we've seen scammers making demands for money. So maybe it's money via bank transfer, crypto, vouchers, really relentless demands for money. They'll usually ask for a high amount, but then they'll negotiate down with that young person to an amount they can afford. If that young person does make payment, it doesn't go away. The scammer now realizes that they're able to make payment and will continue on. And that young person essentially gets trapped in this cycle. And you can understand it. Like, you can imagine for a young person, this thought of your family or your school being sent your nude image is like the worst thing in the world. So you can really understand how upsetting that might be for a young person.
Yeah. Oh, terrifying. And so so it started potentially as people trying to groom children, and now it's a more of a financial scam, or is it's still both?
It's still both. They're different offenders essentially. So, maybe, and it still does happen when it's like an online child sex offender is targeting or grooming a young person for more content. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, now you have this other group, or almost of organized crime offenders, usually offshore in countries like Nigeria, who are similar scammers to the ones we see targeting like our elderly community, those romance scams and things you see in the media. That same group has now sort of realized that teenagers or young people are quite vulnerable and are now targeting them.
Yeah. Okay. So that's interesting then. So is it who the normal target is teenagers, would you say?
I would say in the case of, financial sextortion, it is teenagers. For a long time, and it still is the case that it's largely males or boys that are being targeted. We do see girls, females targeted, but it's slightly different. They'll groom a girl to get the photos and the content to then set up a profile to groom a boy.
Blimey.
So,
okay.
So they're sort of using one to then groom the other. Yeah. But largely it was teenage boys, although, we do see this kind of thing happening to younger than teenagers. And in fact, it's happening to adults as well. It does happen to those over the age of 18. Mm-hmm. But largely males. Right,
okay. And so that's interesting. I didn't put two and two together there, but I suppose the approach is facilitated through a fake profile.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
It'll be a fake social media profile, maybe someone that they know their target will be attracted to. Mm-hmm. Sometimes they'll take over even accounts of people that go to the same school or that they might know.
Okay, yeah.
But someone that this person will be interested in, that's how they'll make their account look.
Yeah, okay. Because I did spot actually a little side thingy on the Think You Know website. One of the questions you can ask your kids is, do they know everybody that they're connected with socially? And I just wondered there if they're navigating that by pretending to be people they do actually know.
Yeah, we have seen cases of that they'll take over those accounts or they'll mimic them. But on that point of knowing who you're friends with, are you friends with them in person versus just online? What we see with this financial sextortion is it's a very quick process. So they'll add this person on social media maybe at night sometime, and really quick tactics, bombard them with very sexualized messages, very flirty. They might even send an image in the first place to encourage that young person to send a nude image, to make them feel safer, they've sent me one, I can feel a bit safer sending one. And so it's usually a very quick process that maybe even happens over the span of one night.
And then the kind of financial stuff that they're after, like you said, would be vouchers that, you know, maybe teens would have access to, that kind of.
Yeah, they'll negotiate with the teen or with the young person to make payment in a way that works for them. So maybe firstly they'll encourage like bank transfer, and if the teen sort of says they don't have access to that, they might suggest vouchers or
Right.
another process. And you know that young person will get that either through their part-time job. They might even get friends to help put the money together. They might even steal that money.
Yeah.
Usually there's a bit of a sense of desperation by this young person to make the payment, to make it all go away.
Yeah.
And you know, on top of that, when an offender sort of flips the script and shows themselves to be actually malicious and starts making the demands, they're really quite relentless, and they'll bombard the young person with messages, really blow up their phone, high pressure tactics to get this person panicking,
Yeah.
and to get that payment together as quickly as possible.
Yeah, right, okay. And if just to indulge my curiosity here, if the young person was to just shut the laptop down and disconnect from them and what have you, how likely is the threat of the follow through? Like, does the school get emailed? You know, like, do they go that deep with the scams?
It's hard to say. You know, there would be cases, some scenarios where maybe they would just realise that it wouldn't work with this person, and then they move on to the next target.
Yeah.
Whereas other cases, maybe they do follow through. We have seen both instances happen. They do follow through, and they send the nude image to their parents or to their friends list on social media. You know, that does happen. I think it depends on the offender.
Yeah, okay. Right, so yeah, I wasn't sure if the advice in the situation is just to ignore them or... but they do follow through.
It feels, you know, easy sitting here to say just ignore them and stop the chat when... What if they do follow through? But, you know, I don't know, it's, I guess that's where this whole have a conversation thing starts. And that's why we're so encouraging of parents to have the conversation with young people before it happens, so that the young person knows that, well, they can identify those red flags, or maybe if they have sent the image, they can get help quickly and sort of know quickly that maybe if it does get sent, I'm going to be okay. This isn't the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, okay. So this is something, this again, sextortion, is something that you pretty much solely focus on under that umbrella of think you know. So how big is this problem then? Like, to require the resources that you guys put into it? Like, do you know how often? I mean, you've got your window into it, but how big is the broader problem?
Yeah, so it is definitely a major concern for the AFP and the ACE, and we have seen it internationally as well. The AFP works very closely with international law enforcement, New Zealand, United States, UK, where it's been an issue in all these countries. From an Australian perspective, just to give you some stats, in the first 6 months of 2024, the ACE received over 500 reports of sextortion, with an average of about 93 reports a month.
Yeah.
But in saying that, compared to 2023, the calendar year of 2023, we were receiving an average of about 300 reports a month. So it has gone down.
Yeah.
But what we do know as well, that this is a massively underreported crime, you know, and you can understand why a lot of young people probably just want it to go away. They don't want it to be brought to their parents' attention. They don't want police to know. Or a massive one is they'll think they'll get arrested, or they'll think they'll get into trouble.
Yeah.
A tactic that offenders use is they convince the young person that because they've taken this nude image of themselves, which if you're under 18 is technically child abuse material, that they're going to be arrested by police, that they're going to be charged, which definitely isn't the case, you know. But you can understand they're convinced to think that way.
Yeah.
So that stops a lot of young people from seeking help and reporting it. So it is massively underreported, but, you know, we have seen reports go down, and we think that is due to the collective effort of law enforcement and other NGOs to sort of raise awareness of this to parents and to young people as well. But the AFP and law enforcement has also engaged in a lot of intervention, interruption or disruption efforts to, I guess, make it a bit of a harder crime to commit for those offenders.
Oh, that's good. So yeah, it's probably those multiple fronts are having the effect. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, interesting. That is interesting because I mean it's not unexpected, but I don't think it's really sort of filtered into a particular, like I said, my eldest is 9. It hasn't really kind of come in to our sort of field of perspective yet, but I imagine that it sort of we'll start to see stuff as she maybe matures online or whatever. So that's interesting. So then,
well, we do definitely recommend having these conversations about this kind of thing as young as possible. Obviously in an age appropriate way, like parents know what conversation suits their child's maturity and everything like that, but the sooner that you have these conversations, often the better. I talk to colleagues that have teenage kids and they sort of say talking to a teenager about this is impossible or it's hard. So having the conversations early, starting that foundation and building upon it as they get older is such a great I guess great starting point. And saying that about teenagers, we were all teenagers once, it's still worth having the chat and trying to have the chat with everyone, I guess. Yeah,
totally. No, I agree. I mean, it's like that with a lot of tricky subjects. The advice is to start young and build that relationship of trust if you can, and they will feel comfortable coming to you, like you said. If they think they're going to get in trouble either with the school or with police or whatever, you need to be the one that they can trust and come to. That's really cool. So I mean, in terms of that as a preventative step, what are some other steps that parents can take apart from rushing off to think obviously?
Well, that'd be our number one, right?
Yeah, of course.
But no, look, there are a lot of things parents can do, and like we probably harp on it massively, I think, but having those conversations is really probably our number one piece of advice. And we're talking about tech, we're talking about social media, all that kind of stuff. Parental controls, privacy settings are all great options available to parents to implement at home. They are great, they can be a really good tool, but they can't be used in isolation. They need to be used in conjunction with behavioural actions like conversations, supervision, all that kind of stuff. For a multitude of reasons, firstly, you can give your child the most locked down device with the biggest restrictions at home, but if they go to a sleepover with a device that's kind of free reign for whatever reason, they need to have the skills in their mind about how to tackle it, how to notice red flags, how to respond, all that kind of stuff. And another thing is kids are pretty tech savvy. We've seen evidence of this ourselves, that if some people set up parental controls, privacy settings, kids can often just go back and turn them off. I don't want to snitch on the teens out there, but a quick Google search of how to get around insert parental control, you will find a result that gives you a step-by-step process. I hope I'm not giving anyone any ideas here.
Well, no.
But they can find their way around it, and our concern with that is if a kid is maybe doing something in secret and then something goes wrong, well, they're going to be way less likely to seek help. Out of that fear of getting into trouble, and that for us is a bit of a concern, because that help seeking part of it is really important. They've doubled down on the lie at that point, haven't they? But exactly. I see what you mean. It's interesting. It was in a separate conversation about accessing pornography and stuff like that, but I saw a list of devices that connect to the internet, and it blew me away, like the sort of places that kids can do see porn, whether it's been searched for or not. But there's web browsers on
games consoles.
Yeah.
You know, PlayStation has one.
Yeah.
You know, you can do all sorts of things. Yeah, I couldn't even list them off, but like smart TVs, stuff like that.
Yeah.
You know, all can browse the internet, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh wow, okay, yeah. You think you've locked 2 down, and there's 8
Yeah.
more that you've forgotten about.
I've even seen memes about, the smart fridges being able to access like a web browser on a smart fridge or
Yeah.
any smart device, which is crazy to me. But yeah, you're right. There's internet connectivity on really a lot of things these days. So
Yeah.
that's why we look more to the behavioral actions,
Yeah,
the critical thinking, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and in terms of the sort of tips for that, I know that Think You Know has got the fact sheets and stuff like that for sort of having these conversations in like like a logical progression.
Yeah.
Yeah. So talking to your kids and just gaining that trust is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Different things are relevant to kids at different age brackets. Yourself, you have younger kids or 6 and 9, so maybe the activities that they're more doing online is the online gaming and watching videos. So you can adapt the conversation to that kind of thing. In online games, you can still communicate with other people. Multiplayer games, you get randomly paired with others, and there is a communication feature.
Yeah.
So having conversations about that, or if someone asks you something that makes you feel uncomfortable, sort of foundation level conversations. And then as they get older, maybe you're a little bit more, with teenagers, you're more candid about some of the risks online and that there are offenders, talking about relationships online, image sharing, all that kind of stuff, their responsibility with not on sharing images, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And parents know their kids best, so adapting to their maturity needs and what they think is best to talk about.
Yeah. So tailoring those conversations to your like you said, the maturity levels of your kid, but
Yeah.
safe online behavior is really just about empowering them to be able to spot the red flags, right? If there are any.
It's a big one, yeah, exactly. And it does look different, maybe when they're younger, it's sort of the red flags are anyone contacting them online. If anyone
Yeah.
you don't know from school or sport messages you, you turn it off or you come tell mum or dad or
Yeah.
whoever, Whereas as they get older, for example, with financial sextortion, some of the red flags are someone adding you on social media, messaging you, and it gets sexual very quickly is
Yeah.
a pretty big red flag. That if they move you from one platform to another, so just say you meet on one social media platform and they'll move you to a messaging platform, that's a big red flag. We see that very often with even online child sex offenders use that in online grooming. If it gets sexual very quickly, maybe they send images, I guess it's hard to say because image sharing is a bit different with different generations, but if it almost feels too good to be true,
Yeah.
I suppose like that's sort of a red flag.
Yeah.
Also,
Particularly to a teenage boy,
yeah,
I get that.
yeah, I always I feel very empathetic because you can sort of imagine, we're all teenagers once. If you're a teenager and you maybe don't get to talk to people that you like much at school, and then you get this message from someone that's really into you and sends you images and is really flirty, like you can understand why the
Absolutely.
tactic works for some young people, I can empathise.
Yeah, totally. So I think it's interesting then to talk about that stigma then more. I mean, I suppose you're going to feel, if it's happened to you, you're going to feel like a bit of a plonker.
Yeah.
I guess. But in terms of, being able to reduce, well, I guess it's more, again, it all seems to fall back to exactly what you're doing, which is education across all levels. But I think talking about it and having those early conversations, and then also if something, even the first couple of stages of this happen to somebody, that stigma is going to feel less.
Yeah.
Essentially.
And by talking about it, you also acknowledge that this is happening to a lot of young people. This is happening to adults as well. Like this trend or this tactic has really shot up in numbers in the last few years, and a lot of victims come forward. And you know, it may feel like that they might feel a bit silly, or like they're the only one that this has happened to, but it's in reality it's happening to a lot of young people. And these offenders will often move group to group, so they will find their next victim through this young person's friends list or follower list. So if it's happening to one person, one boy at one school, it's probably happening to others within his friend group.
Right, I see, yeah.
You know, so often when we talk to young people about reporting, it's really interesting because I think some young people don't feel empowered to report for themselves. They want it to just go away, but when they find out that maybe it's happened to a friend of theirs or it could happen to others, it's amazing how brave young people get with reporting and seeking help. So sometimes we talk about that, you know, it could be happening to others, it could even be happening to your friends.
Yeah. And so if you haven't, I should say, have cultivated that wonderful you know, back and forth type relationship with your teens, what are some signs maybe that it might be happening or could have happened, or anything to watch out for, really? I think even in terms of preventative measures.
I guess, yeah, some signs. So when we talk to parents and carers about signs of online child sexual exploitation, it can be hard because offenders will either work really hard to keep it a secret or to convince the young person to keep it a secret, or, you know, in the case of financial sextortion, these victims are so desperate for no one to find out that they might try really hard to keep it a secret. But some signs that, you know, we kind of talk about are changes in device use. So in this case, maybe they're really secretive with their devices, they're using them a lot, maybe they're a bit sensitive about it, they don't want their parents to see their phone or their device, they're only using them behind closed doors. Maybe they're being bombarded with messages. Other signs that we've seen is they're upset, they're anxious, depressed, particularly in association with their phone or messages they might be getting. Or, you know, more in the financial sense, maybe they're desperate for money, they're seeking money, they're not really telling you what it's for, or there's money missing from their bank account if a parent has oversight of that. So they are some signs, but unfortunately, a lot of that might just be normal teenage stuff, you know, unfortunately. So that's why it's sort of, again, I repeat myself, but that's why that conversation is important, because, you know, if you notice those signs, then you can sort of check in, and you've already got those talks under your belt to facilitate that conversation when it might be a bit more tricky too, because maybe they're a bit more upset or a little bit more sensitive, or, you know.
I think one thing was wanted to touch on, and I guess it does come back to the, you know, completely unique relationship that people are going to have with their kids, but that balancing of privacy and safety. I mean, if I had even an inkling that my child was being messaged by someone that they didn't know, you know, I'd want to be over their shoulder all the time, like looking at their phone. So how can that be balanced? Is it a trust exercise?
I think to some degree it will have to be a trust exercise, but then, you know, again, it depends on the family. I think there will have to be some element of compromise. Like I said earlier, if there is like a high level of strictness and maybe no compromise, there is that risk that the young person does it in secret anyway, and that for us opens up new problems of not wanting to report to their parents if things go wrong, and offenders already use that. But you know, an example is we have a resource on our website. It's a bit of a contract, I guess. There's one that's already complete, and it's a set of sort of guidelines or rules or expectations to have with your child around technology or device use. There's also an empty one or a blank one, and that's designed to you can come up with your own rules, your own guidelines. And we always sort of say that if you're coming up with rules for your kid, maybe there needs to be rules for the parent as well. Maybe it's you don't use your device at the dinner table, you don't take work calls after a certain time. That way it feels like more of a collaborative,
absolutely,
I guess, contract. Maybe you set expectations early, so if a young person gets a new device, you sort of say, well, I want to do a privacy checkup every now and then, or I'm going to be your friend on this social media platform so I can see who you're friends with and whatnot. It really does depend on the child. Maybe there's a parental control that has oversight of who they talk to. If there's trial and error, so it's okay to work it out. But I think as long as there's some compromise there and some understanding of, like you said, that privacy aspect.
Yeah, well, I think it's interesting that it's obviously been thought about, like you said, have addressed it as an issue, that can be sort of worked around, and building on those things, the trust, the mutual agreement. I mean, we all should not take our phones to the toilet or have them at the dinner table and stuff like that. So it's good for everybody, right?
Well, exactly. Yeah. Maybe some of the rules will help with our own screen time, right? So
exactly. Yeah, I always get shocked when I see that little message come up that tells me what my weekly is.
I know.
Yeah. So now this is obviously you guys are in Australia, but in terms of what to do if you found out this has happened, what's the general rules here? As opposed to go into a mad panic.
I know. Well, that's the biggest thing, right? It's easy for me to sit here and say to remain calm. Because it's obviously, it's a very emotional thing, and it'd be very upsetting to find out that this has happened to your child. Very understandably upsetting, but it is important to sort of try to remain calm in that moment, because that could impact how it goes from there. So if you sort of react with anger or disappointment, maybe that prevents your child from seeking help again in the future, or even going any further with this report. So we always say, try to remain calm in that moment. If you have to step away for a bit and react however you need to react in private, do that, but reassure them that they haven't done the wrong thing, that it's okay, that you're there to help. A big thing is something that I think, really advocates is not to punish the young person, not to take their device off them as punishment or anything like that. That is a really big barrier that actually prevents a lot of young people from seeking help in the first place. They think that they're going to get into trouble. They think they're going to lose their phone. In fact, we get a lot of reports through to the ACE, through to our triage unit, with children themselves making the report. And in the comments, they'll say, I don't want my parents to find out. Please don't tell my parents. Because, the phone's going to go. Yeah, they're going to be angry or whatever. And that is pretty sad, because clearly this young person wants help. From there, just in that moment, don't send any more images, don't pay any more or at all, don't respond, just don't enter into any more communication, stop the chat. Remind them they're not alone. Collect evidence is a big one. So, that might mean collecting screenshots of the conversation, collecting screenshots of their username, everyone's username, profile name, all of that. Don't screenshot any of the images at this point, just because it is technically child abuse material. Law enforcement can help you with that sort of process a bit further on. And if necessary, block the person. We do say to collect evidence before blocking, but sometimes they're really quite relentless, and if you have to block, and then make the report. So make the report through to police. In Australia, it's the ACCCE. In New Zealand, I'm not too sure. But police, essentially. Report that to police. Police are there to help. They're not interested in charging the young person or getting them into trouble. They want to investigate the matter. Yeah,
absolutely. What's a success rate of, I don't even know what a successful outcome would be. I mean, is there a prosecution? Is there legal repercussions? I mean, you're not flying off to Nigeria or wherever these are coming from.
One of the, I guess, successes that we've had is, since 2022, the AFP has worked closely with AusTrack. So in an Australian context, we've worked with the financial sector, we've worked with banks, really to focus on closing those bank accounts that are linked to this crime, that are linked to the offshore organised crime groups, linked to the accounts involved in sextortion. So I guess some of these reports, we find out the accounts associated through that. They're able to be taken down and intervened. And because of that, we've made it a very hostile environment for these offshore organised crime groups to target Australian victims.
Right, okay. Yeah.
So that's probably one of the biggest things, is by that investigation we can get the reports that make it harder and can shut that down and, prevent it from happening to their circle of friends. The other thing that can happen is that young person gets help. So on the other end, we are seeing incidences of suicide and self-harm being linked to this crime type, to financial sextortion. Like I said, you can imagine this being the worst thing in the world to happen to a young person. Yep. Usually it's happening at night time when their family's gone to sleep, and they're up alone sort of faced with this. And, if they're able to report, and if we're able to get this messaging in before they consider those other other things, then police are able to do a welfare check, make sure that they're doing okay. They can get access to support services, speak to someone online, a counsellor, to ensure that they're okay and that they're mentally doing okay.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Good. All that sounds very valuable. That kind of victim support system that will kick in. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. What's like a wrap up of advice then, for parents and teens listening, I guess?
Yeah. Well, I guess for parents, our top tips, if we were to sum them up, would, of course, number one would be have those conversations and have them often. Supervision is essential, particularly for younger children. To consider privacy settings, check them, implement them. They do play a really good role. Be approachable and to know how to report.
Yeah.
And I guess if I was to messaging to young people, and I think everyone's messaging to young people should be, if this does happen to you, you're not alone. It's okay, that you will be helped. You won't get into trouble. Police are not interested in arresting victims. We're here to help. We're here to investigate and help the matter go away.
Yeah. And
provide that ongoing support. And if it happens to them, to stop the chat, I guess, as well, is another big one.
Yeah. And watch out for the too good to be trues, eh?
Yeah. I think that's probably a good message for everyone, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. It's like, ooh, goody, I'm actually the beneficiary of 57 million euros from
exactly. That's such a
Who knew?
Who knew? Yeah, too good to be true.
Yeah. Okay, awesome. Okay, so then more information, everything is thinkyounknow.org.au, but you also said that it's connected to other countries as well.
Well, our law enforcement at the ACE has worked closely with international law enforcement, but the ACE I would recommend as a really great resource as well. So that's the ACCCE, the Australian Centre to Counter Child Exploitation. Like all law enforcement, we love our acronyms. So www.ace.gov.au. There is a dedicated sextortion help page that has pretty much everything I've talked about. So many really strong resources listed there for parents, carers, even young people themselves.
Brilliant. All right, that's excellent. Like we sort of touched on at the beginning of this, I feel positive actually about it all, because it doesn't feel like it. Of course, it's horrible, and of course, some of the outcomes can be deeply tragic and all the rest of it. But with some small, and positive and good for everybody preventative steps potentially at the beginning, or that then look to mitigate it.
Exactly. Yeah, there are manageable, simple steps that everyone can take, and even just by having this conversation now and bringing attention to it, and sort of realizing the empathy and understanding towards the people this happens to is really important to changing the conversation.
Yeah, it is. I just think it's like I said, I'm 43. I think it just wasn't on my radar, at all, as a kid, or even, I suppose you get a few emails, don't you, that like you said, that say things about, some royal king of somewhere has left you a load of money or something.
Exactly.
But they clearly are getting more savvy and then finding more targets, and kids, the younger they get, the more time they spend online. Yeah. And
particularly vulnerable as well, you know. So it's unfortunate, but it's good we're having the chat, and the ACE and AFP have worked really hard to, and as have law enforcement across the world, to really try and make a difference.
Yeah, no, it's good. I mean, just on that sort of, I guess that topic of everybody kind of always having to keep learning and kind of keep upskilling. Like in the time that you've been doing this, has it shifted? Are you always kind of playing catch up? Are there new techniques that they're implementing, or a change that you've seen over those sort of 5 or so years?
I guess the thing with technology is that it changes very quickly. Even new apps pop up, new platforms, new capability pops up when it comes to like online communication, everything like that. So we do have to regularly upskill. We want to be across youth trends, and at the ACE we have intel teams that work really hard to stay up to date with not just sextortion or financial sextortion, but online grooming and dark web and all that kind of stuff. So definitely a lot of work goes into it, a lot of research, a lot of time spent. But I think sextortion in particular, this was a massive increase, particularly in that 2022, 2023. So we had to learn very quickly and respond very quickly, which I think we did a good job. I think we produced a lot of resources in a short turnaround, put out ads, sent out resourcing to every school in the country, out to all police stations, banks. We definitely try our best. But it is a very quickly changing space.
Oh yeah, I can't even imagine. I mean, 2016, I was like, great, I've got Instagram solved. Oh no, haven't. And
then they introduce something new, and it's I'm behind again. Yeah,
exactly.
It's interesting you say that, because tech will always evolve, and there'll be new apps and different platforms and capability, but I think even as things change, those key tips remain the same. Like the conversations, privacy, supervision, being approachable, knowing how to report, that will still apply 5 years into the future. Just like it did 5 years ago. So it can be very overwhelming to try and stay up to date with it all, but really those tips are consistent no matter what, I guess. Which is reassuring, I hope.
Yeah, no, it is. I just imagine, that if it ever happened to me, that technology gap would be the first thing. It's like, sorry, you were doing what? You were Snapchatting who, or you were like live streaming? It's like, I don't understand any of that, but all right, let's work from there.
But you're there, that's it. Let's work from there. Let's work it out together. That's
awesome.
what we can do.
Cool. All right. Well, thank you very much for your excellent advice and time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
It's been really great, and like I said, positive. Proactive. Love it.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We really hope you enjoyed today's episode. Before we sign off, we wanted to ask you for your help. Because we talk about sex, we keep getting shadow banned across a whole bunch of social media platforms. And that not only makes it hard for people to find us, but it sends a message that sex isn't okay to talk about. Not only is sex okay to talk about, it's totally essential, because more knowledge equals better outcomes for all of us across a whole bunch of different measures. You can make a difference, and what we need from you is your active support. So please follow the podcast and consider checking out our social channels too: Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, whatever takes your fancy. You can find us at sexandspace.com and click on our social links from there. Help us make sex an okay space. Thank you for taking the Sex and Space trip with us, and until next time, safe travels, and we'll see you on the next intergalactic episode.